Welcome everybody back to the DomCast. This is episode 15. This is the first pod we've done since before All-Star break. Took a little bit of a break with the All-Stars, although apparently I'm not one. But I have brought one to the pod. This is Stefan from Heat Check. It's a very well-known YouTube channel. And if you don't know it, he'll tell you where to find him and what he does. So Stefan, welcome. And thanks for coming on, and let the people know, what type of videos you make, how you got into it, all that type of stuff, and where the people can find your content. And I doubt they don't know where, because you're one of the biggest NBA YouTubers as far as I know.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. I know me and you have been talking about collaborating in some sort of way for a while now. The only reason why you haven't why we haven't sorted things out for you to come on my channel is because I'm still struggling to figure out the new studio. For people that watch me, on my channel, Heat Check, I do basketball videos, breakdowns, actions and play calls and stuff like that, and player breakdowns. And recently I moved to a new studio, and I love it. I love what I've been able to do with it, but still there's some sort of, all kinds of problems like echo, like reverb and stuff like that, and camera angles. And I need to sort all of that out, and it takes a lot of time, and I haven't been able to focus on my creativity. Now it's still in the problem solving, stage. But it's good. I do what I love, break down play calls and what the coaches draw up in 10 minutes and stuff like that, and I love it.
Right, yeah, and a lot of people do. I do as well. It's pretty much, I would say, one of my favorite parts of basketball content, out of all the content that's out there. Love breakdowns, like b-ball breakdown, Thinking Basketball, your channel, and a lot of them have some type of background in basketball. What was yours to where you started doing play breakdowns? Because you're also, I would say you're probably one of the underrated ones when it comes to that.
First of all, thanks. And first of all, you caught me by surprise one time when you tagged me on one of your Instagram stories. There were some questions, who's one of your favorite, YouTube channels, and you mentioned me. I was like, damn, I've known Dom for like a while. He's, one of the more famous YouTube channels. And usually I don't get recognition. People don't really, at least American creators don't really know me. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, damn, that's cool. But in terms of me having like a basketball channel, background, I don't really like a rich history or stuff like that. I used to go to, you don't really have that, I believe, school basketball teams. It's more AAU in the US and stuff like that, I guess. So I guess you could say that growing up, I played for a couple of years. 5'5", being 5'5", you cannot really do much on the. So I used to get, should I say, like a end of the bench type of guy who comes in plus 20 or minus 20. Garbage time. I was a garbage time player, but honestly, it gave me like an opportunity to see how the game was being played, from first row. And I've always been in love with the NBA, staying up late. For people that don't know, I'm in Macedonia in Europe, so we have a huge time difference. So the games start at 1 a.m. They end at if it's a West Coast game, they end 6:30, 7 sometimes in the morning. So I've always stayed up late watching games, and I feel like my eyes are sharpened up just watching a lot of games. And I was always curious what happens, how do players go to different spots, how do they get open, And I would say one thing is always rewind the tape. If you don't know what's going on, just rewind the tape. You'll find out a lot of things.
Right, absolutely. That's something for your time difference. I meant to mention that at the beginning. It is a 6-hour time difference, so it's 6 p.m. New York time here where we're recording. It's midnight for him. So I know Jazz and Suns just ended. This is on a Sunday when games have come on relatively early, so he's probably been able to see some of those at a regular time. However, and on a normal day, games would just be starting like an hour from now, probably. So yeah, pretty much like you said, 1 a.m. That's crazy. But got a lot of good content. content, got a very detailed channel to have to be catching games on the flip side of the day. So shout out to the dedication for that. And for this podcast, there hasn't been a lot of basketball since last Thursday, I believe. Gosh, has it been that long already? Oh, no, this Thursday. Hasn't been that much basketball since this Thursday. So we'll just kind of be talking about the season in general, MVP race, the teams that have caught our eye, those type of things is where we're going to be going with it. We will move into regular basketball that matters. And another one of your recent videos actually was talking about the Celtics and them, basically the improvement they've made. So I talk about Boston a little bit. They're making more appearances on the podcast as of late because they're playing better. Up to this point in the season, I hadn't really believed in them, but this is our chance to kind of dive in a little bit deeper on, what's happening with them, what's changed, and where they'll possibly be going in this crazy Eastern Conference. So you made a video about the Celtics. What are you thinking about them so far? Because I did see the word contenders in the title, and as a Celtics fan, I'm not on. I don't know. Wait, first, before we even have that convo, who are you a fan of? What team are you a fan of, if at all?
I'm a Knicks fan. I've been a Knicks fan, since the '99 finals. But every few years, like a few teams that I really love following, and ever since the conference finals that Boston went to against LeBron, where they were supposed to have Kyrie and Hayward got injured, and Kyrie as well. Ever since then, I've kind of liked the Celtics, and then the next season Kyrie comes back, they should be really good, and they weren't. And I started to really criticize them, didn't live up to expectations and stuff like that. And I have been, all this time. But to be honest, something clicked. And whenever I cannot figure what that something is, I always check defense. What's going on defense? So throughout all of this, like a winning streak that they had, they put up monster defensive numbers. They were like 10 efficiency points better than the best defense, which is Golden State, which is like a huge thing. And I was like, oh damn. And I see ball movement, I see the ball not sticking. Tatum takes less and less of his isolation shots. So also huge addition. I feel like Derek White fit in nicely with that team. I also liked and cheered for my guy, what was the name? German guy, Schroeder. I also cheered for Schroeder to kind of get his money, to get back somewhere close to what he was supposed to get. But having him away and White in the team, it's a huge change. So I really feel like they're in the mix because the East is wide open now. You saw a few nights ago, I believe it was last night, like all of a sudden Brooklyn beat the Bucks
last night. Yeah, actually.
Yeah, and I'm like, what's going on? Everyone can beat everyone. So I don't know. In this kind of a situation, the Celtics are definitely back in the mix.
Yeah, it's been a wild season to follow as a Boston fan. So everyone who follows knows I've been a Celtics fan since like 07, 08 when I really started to keep up with basketball. Before that, I was just off and on, but this is the first team I ever actually latched on to. This season in particular, it's been like, first of all, I don't know what the stat is since it updated. So on Christmas Day, they had a stat. I think Boston was probably 2-10 in games that were decided by 5 points or fewer or something. It was something ridiculous to where like their record could have been totally flipped. And so they've had moments like that day on Christmas Day against the Bucks. They've had moments this season where it has you feeling the way that they could be a good team. They could be a good team. They could be competitive. They can compete with this top team. It just felt like it never lasted the entire game. So it's been like that mostly throughout the year. They've been trying to get Jason Tatum going at the MVP level. I was hoping that he came into the season as. They've been trying to get him and Jaylen Brown going at the same time. And it does, you brought up all the points basically. It's fitting right now because the ball is moving a lot more. So it isn't just Tatum taking the toughest shots in the world. The ball is moving a ton. The defense has picked up that's my favorite part about the squad right now, because when you talk about the addition of Derek White, yes, he's fit in for more than just defense, by the way. He comes in and plays a very, very solid backup point guard role. But defensively now, you got Derek White, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, all as guys that can defend on the perimeter. That's a hell of a night for a lot of these squads. The way you brought up the standings, they are now I could probably do it this way. They're 6th seed. They're, oh my gosh, they are half a game behind the Bucks now. They could pass the Milwaukee Bucks conceivably. That's fascinating. They're only a game behind the 4th-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers. They're only 2 games behind the 76ers, who I'm sure we'll talk about. Yeah, it's an exciting time, because I've been more, and I'm wondering what you've thought about this, because I'm surely you've heard the talks. At this point, it's been, you were talking about in 2018 when they were supposed to go to the finals. It's been around 4 years or 4 or 5 seasons of the Tatum and Brown thing. And we got to this point in the season where things looked so stagnant. I just kind of assumed that, okay, the way the money is, the way the roster is, the next big move kind of feels like it's to break those two up and trade one and completely retool the team. That's what it felt like before they got into this point in the season. So had that been anything that you had been paying attention to or thinking about, like the eventual end of Tatum and Brown? We don't really have to think about it as much, because right now, again, they look competitive, although I don't think they'll make it out of the East, which is eventually the goal. So I just kind of wonder if those two will ever make it out of the East together, because they've been so close. But even this year, it just feels like that's really all it'll ever be, is them getting close.
I feel like this was a nice, like, a turning point, because from now on, I feel like the talk will get back to, oh, they just need like a little piece here and there. Whereas up until this point, from the beginning of the season up until now, it was like, I guess we should break them up. And I thought about that as well. I was like, that's the step to go now. You know, we've seen them for like 3 or 4 years. I guess this is gonna be their ceiling. I don't know. But I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned that you're a Celtics fan, have you seen that video? There was a video compilation, and also Brian Scalabrine was on a podcast, and he also mentioned that as well. The Robert Williams help defense thing. Have you seen that?
I actually haven't, no.
The Celtics, like, they changed something in their defensive strategy to where now they have Robert Williams on the side, often guarding the corner shooter. So if a penetration happens from, to any player, he just goes to help under the basket. So now the attacking team has to get in some sort of like a rotation to move the ball, and the Celtics get into defensive rotation. They're able to close out. So you don't have Robert Williams spent on a potential pick and roll. If there's a high pick and roll, for example, with the big man, Williams would be stuck there.
Right.
They guard him away from the pick and roll. They put him, on the corner shooter. Whatever pick and roll situation happens up top, whoever gets a driving lane goes to the basket. Robert Williams goes to help there, and that's a much more versatile defense for them. And obviously, they're lengthy, they're quick, they're able to then rotate and help out on the potential pass.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a hell of an adjustment. And that's a great way to use Robert Williams because of his athleticism. That's a guy that I'm so glad we've been able to hold on to, because I've been big on Robert Williams since, I would say, around 2020, when our options were practically what was it, like him or Tice, basically. I think we were trying to use against the Miami Heat back then, so I always wanted more Robert Williams. But that is definitely an adjustment, and it's something that Boston can do, like you said, because they've got the personnel for it now. You've got different ways to mix in lineups to where you could be all right with being put in rotation, switching, scrambling, those type of things. You could do it successfully. So Boston, man, it's they've put me through so much over the years, and specifically this season. I am glad to see it clicking. 9-1 in the last 10. It has been a lot of teams that probably aren't that great. So since the calendar year started, basically, since they've been playing well, but I don't care that much, because it's like, if you're used to following this team this year, beating teams you should beat this often is an improvement. Beating them this consistently is an improvement, and that's what I'm happy to see. And that will open up our conversation for the rest of the East, because even with this win streak and how good they look, this is just, well, first of all, this is easily the most competitive I've seen the Eastern Conference probably in my own lifetime. And you can be a great team right now and still not stand a chance of actually getting out of this conference. Before we move off of Boston, that's kind of where I'll finish with them. You were saying over the last few years, it's always felt like we just have to look at that last piece to get around Jaylen Brown and Tatum. And I've been wondering if they could get that, if there was a way to possibly get that. And when you get to the point where you kind of feel like there's not a way, especially with the East getting as strong as it is, it just kind of feels like, you know, there's a time limit on those two. But I'm not rushing it. I'm happy with where they are this year. I'm happy with the in-season improvement, and yeah, hopefully they can figure out something with the roster. Go ahead.
What's your quote-unquote price for Marcus Smart? What would you have to get trying to give up Marcus Smart?
Gosh, man, Marcus Smart. I do wonder how much other teams would value him. Because I remember the Timberwolves were actually interested in him this trade deadline. And outside of Tatum and Brown, since I knew that I knew they weren't trading Tatum, and I figured they probably weren't trading Brown. That's always been the hard part of this is, hey, if you want to get this team to a championship level, you're gonna have to give something eventually, because you're probably not gonna be able to sign another star. I don't think there's another star that's just coming there. And so then your names do go to Marcus Smart, right? Immediately. That's one of the most important players on the squad. That's always where it goes. And then that's when I kind of extended, man. I always extended and go, look, no, don't trade Tatum, don't trade Brown, but also don't trade Smart either. But then I don't know how you get any better. But I'm not even sure though, just Smart by himself. I'm not sure that would net them the piece that would move them over the top to a championship team. And he's so important to what they do. Do you think there's a piece out there that they would get for him that would change that? Because that's why I haven't wanted to let him go.
Yeah, not really a piece, but I wanted to ask you that because I saw that Marcus Smart is obviously a confident player. He can fire away, even in transition, even if there's a better shot possibly, he fires away. He's confident. But I saw a stat in the last 5 or 6 years, he's consistently in the top 10 worst shooters in terms of field goal. Higher volume shooters, consistently top 10 worst.
Well, that's why I started off answering that question of, I wonder what other teams value him at, because I feel like for the Celtics and what they do, and even the defensive scheme that you were talking about that allows Robert Williams out from the side, I feel like Smart is really important to those specific things, and he's been important to even in 2020 when they almost made the finals run. I feel like he was one of the most important players then. So it's like you can be in a really important piece to a certain squad and to what they do, but that doesn't necessarily translate to a great price, for reasons like you just said. Something, maybe a GM pulls something like that out and it's like, oh well, this is what we'll get for him, and it's not at all what Boston would probably be looking for, which is probably why he hasn't been traded at this point. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to offense with this specific team, I'm like, okay, you got Grant Williams having a great year from the three-point line. Got Tatum and Brown, you know what they're going to do offensively. Even now, Derek White is contributing a little bit to it. I don't necessarily, the more shooting, the better, but I don't necessarily care about, Smart being the most efficient scorer out there or the most, or the best shooter out there. It's like, what other contributions can you get just little by little from other guys around those two for this specific squad? And I don't think that results in an Eastern Conference run or anything like that. This will be a pretty important summer to seeing the future of Tatum and Brown at this point, because the thing that you're looking at now with your squad ceiling is the strength of the Eastern Conference. This conference is ridiculously deep. As I'm just looking at the standings right here, with the Celtics playing better, if Cleveland can ever actually get healthy, which even without the health they stayed 4th seed, the only team here that's like maybe it's a weak link, if you wanted to use the term weak link, if you wanted to use that, maybe you're looking at, maybe some people would still look at Boston, but another name that comes up is Toronto. But after that, bro, it's the Nets, it's the Bucks, The Cavaliers have been great. It's Harden and Embiid on the Sixers, who that's looking really nice right now after 2 games. It's the Bulls and it's the Heat. This is stupid. Let's go ahead and open up the conversation to the rest of the East. Who excites you most in terms of a team that has the most potential in the playoffs, you think? We're after the trade deadline now. The rosters are pretty much what they are. Who's really catching your eye?
I've always been interested in Miami ever since from the beginning of the season, from when they got Lowry and Tucker. That's a huge defensive lineup, but they haven't had an opportunity to really play together all of those key pieces. As I heard this on a podcast actually recently, and Zach Lowe's podcast. I don't know if you pay attention to that podcast. The top 5 guys, like the Butler, Adebayo, Tucker, Lowry, and I believe they mentioned Hero. I feel like they've only played like 80 minutes together.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And they have like crazy net rating. You know, defensively, they're one of 2 teams that have better like net rating against the top 15 teams than the bottom. Which, you know, if you're gonna measure that, the bottom 15 teams, you're not gonna see those in the playoffs. You know.
Yeah.
But against the top 15 teams, they have crazy results, and them and Dallas are the 2 teams that only have this type of positive rating. So yeah, like to see them at full strength, and I feel like they are at full strength now, if I'm not mistaken. So since the East is so wide open, I feel like everybody's taking the what do you call that? The safe choice of just picking the Bucks, since hey, at least we know what we're getting with them. But at the same time, this season they've been, I don't know, hot and cold, and you know, losing to teams that they should not have been losing to. And now the latest one was Brooklyn at home.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I love Miami.
Yeah.
Let me know, what do you think about Philly though?
Oh gosh. So yeah, we'll circle. Yeah, we'll circle back to Miami, man. Getting James Harden, bro. There's 2 versions of him. There's the one that you can tell is clearly motivated to play and compete, and the one that's not. That sounds like something you would hear off like ESPN or Stephen A. Smith, but it really is. Because just 2 weeks ago, when it was breaking down in Brooklyn, you could see a very, very clear decline. Even in these 2 games that he's played for Philly, he's been better on defense than he was in Brooklyn just in these 2 games. He's had better activity there, which when you think of Harden, when he gets traded to Philly, the first thing that comes to your mind, well, maybe not the first thing that comes to your mind, but you do think about, okay, defensively, how does this hurt this team? Hasn't really hurt yet. Putting Harden and Embiid, I had to put question marks on it. The whole time I've talked about it, I've said question marks because I did not know which Harden was showing up. I didn't know if it was going to be the one that's been very streaky in Brooklyn and did not look fully healthy, or if he was going to magically be healthy, because I made it very clear. So my takes didn't age like milk. Made it very clear, if you get like Harden that Brooklyn originally traded for and you put him on Philly, that's an entire different ball game. You put the one that doesn't shoot well and, you know, can't really explode off the dribble, then I was okay, give Philly another year and let him get healthy over the summer. The Harden that we've seen through these 2 games, it's magical and it's fit with Philly in every way except trying to put him on the floor with an entire bench. That's something I think Doc needs to chill on, because putting Harden on the floor with 4 of the bench guys, with 4 of Philly's bench guys, the bench is not that great, so I think they'll figure that out over time. But just right now, Tyrese Maxey, who, gosh, Philadelphia really found a way to keep him and trade for Harden. He's playing beautifully off of Harden's activity. He's taking passes from him. That's the guy that you would originally or immediately think would struggle if you add a player like Harden, who can tend to be ISO heavy. You look at Maxey and say, okay, he spent this season on ball, now he's going off. You think he would struggle. Right now, it's working beautifully for him. Harden already, doing what he does with assists, but then the pick and roll with him and Joel Embiid. So many options. They're already abusing that. I just saw a stat that before the trade, 42% of Embiid's buckets were assisted. Since the trade, it's only been 2 games, but that number has jumped to 80% with James Harden. So it's having to work way less to get these buckets. And And yeah, both of them are getting to the free throw line like a million times a game. That's the New York game that I just watched shortly before this podcast came on. I swear they added like an hour of game time onto that because those two were getting there just automatically. But to be fair, the Knicks were fouling quite a bit. Yeah, so just a 2-game sample thus far. But if you get this Harden and it looks this good and it gets better, and he and Embiid really figure out the pick and roll a lot faster than I thought they could, because I always thought it was going to work. It was just about getting, timing that before April. Man, Philadelphia jumps, like they really jump on my list. But yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts like before and after the trade as well.
Here's one thing that jumps to me, is the fact that I want this to be the Philadelphia 76ers consistently, and I want to see this in the playoffs as well. I don't want this to be like the honeymoon period where, oh, it's all good, I'm gonna try on defense, we're gonna play this, and the ball would move, it doesn't stick, because now it does not stick. That thing rifles through the perimeter side to side. Whenever there's like double team on Embiid, he gets rid of it quickly, circles around the perimeter, whoever is open shoots it, and oftentimes they just find a way to penetrate all the way to the basket. And now all of a sudden Tobias Harris, who's like people are iffy on him to be like a big piece for your team, now he's the third, maybe on some nights fourth best player. To have that type of weapon, like basically 18 to 20 point scorer to be your third or fourth option, that's awesome. And Tyrese Maxey, I don't know why I'm hesitant about him. For some reason, I cannot define him. I cannot find a position for him. He's like a wild card for me. Runs around, throws his floater. I don't know, before the trade, he was often like the point guard, the prototypical point guard, bring the ball up and set the offense. But to me, the point guard should be a bit more conventional, find guys, and not be. He's wild to me, at least. He's a bit unorthodox, but he finds ways to be extremely efficient, extremely productive for both himself and the team. And I see the stats here. He's shooting great, like field goal percentage great, 3-point. He's awesome, 40%. And they're playing quick, especially now.
Yeah.
Especially now after the trade. And wow, that's all I can say. All I can say is I want to see this exact play style in the playoffs. I don't want to see no ISO things, because they're great like this. They can function as a team. They don't need no Embiid ISO, Harden ISO. They're great like this.
The good thing about that is it seems that they realize that Harden and Embiid, it feels like they became best friends after one day, but the chemistry is building, and you still do get points where maybe some other action is broken down, or Harden's on the court by himself, because right at the moment, rightfully so, Doc is saying, hey, at all times we're going to have either Harden or Embiid on the floor. So I think you see more of an ISO Harden without Embiid on the floor. When he's on the floor, yes, it's fully looking as if they realize what they have. Those two in a pick and roll, you can get so many teams in foul trouble. I think they fouled both of the Knicks big men out tonight, and one of them got fouled out probably either very early in the fourth quarter or late in the third. So when you have two guys like that draw fouls and you're putting them in those type of actions, and the fact that you don't, it's not always a set thing. You don't always know what Embiid is going to do because he can shoot. And then Harden, the generational passer, as well as with the floater. There's just an unlimited number of ways that those two can hurt you. So I doubt that you're just going to be seeing lazy ISO plays when both of them are on the court. I think that's more of just something that'll be in the back pocket if they need it. To your point of Tobias Harris, so that is a good point, because he had struggled pretty mightily this year. They paid him a ton of money. He was getting booed by his own Philly crowd earlier this year because they have a crazy amount of money wrapped up in him, and it just wasn't producing at that level. So he doesn't have to produce at that level, one, when you have two guys like that. And then Tyrese Maxey, who's looking like the third best player on the team. I will say, and Doris Burke talked about it a good bit through a lot of the Knicks game, his most important role to me now is when Embiid is off the floor. and and Doc Rivers figures out you don't need to put James Harden there with the entire bench, maybe keep Tobias Harris out there with him, that's when it becomes really important, because that's when he needs to be kind of number 2 again. As Harden is, and that's what's going to reveal itself over time, is can he carry an entire just bench unit by himself? But he shouldn't need to. Again, when you have a guy like Tobias Harris making the money that he is and having the skill set we know he has somewhere in there, that's where his most important role is helping basically, stagger minutes. And so once those two are done, you bring back Embiid, and that's when he can just kind of do what he's been doing, up to this point in the season. He's really improved as a floor general as well. So even if it is just isos, he's done a great job finding his shooters. He's done a great job setting the floor as a center. That's a really cool thing to see that's happening in the NBA these days, led by Jokic. But yeah, aside from that, it's just that makes the East even crazier than it was before this trade happened. Before this trade happened, you were looking and going, I did not have Philly as a contender before that. With the roster they had, with the way that they played, they were not a contender before that. They're a contender now that might finish first in the Eastern Conference. So that's Philly for you through 2 games. As far as it would go for Brooklyn, they did win a game in Milwaukee last night with just Kyrie Irving and even Andre Drummond, who was making good defensive plays. Like, go figure with that. He played a really important role in that win. But how do you feel about what they have to put together here in 2 months? Because now we know Ben Simmons actually doesn't have a timetable for his return. If you heard, with the conditioning, with his back, don't actually know when he's going to return. KD should be back in like another week. And it's ambiguous as to when Kyrie is going to be able to play home games, because Woj and Shams just reported that vaccine mandate is coming down, but there's like a caveat in there where we don't exactly know the date Kyrie will be able to play. Something with the private sector, I don't know. But how do you feel about the push that they have to make? Because they'll end up. You said you like Miami. It's theoretical, or it's a hypothetical. Miami could end up playing an A-seeded Brooklyn in the first round, but all 3 of them could be there. So what type of push do you think they can make after this trade?
What type of push? Honestly, I'm not really following them at the moment, because all I know is I'm seeing players like getting heavy minutes, like, I don't know, Cam Thomas, like I don't know, Kessler Edwards. Those are players that are not gonna be like an important role in the playoffs when it matters the most. But I saw the schedule for them somewhere, and they do have like a pretty heavy schedule ahead of them, and it's gonna be clutch for them for Durant to come back, because without him it's gonna be hit or miss, and them actually stuck in the play-in tournament at the end.
Right.
I don't see them getting out of it. Right now they're 3.5 games, but like the teams that they should get out of the play-in tournament, like Boston, Milwaukee, I don't think that they'll fall that much to where Brooklyn gets out of it. So it's interesting. This season is so wild. Both Brooklyn and the Lakers, who we all thought are going to be, prime candidates for getting out of their conferences, they all are pretty much stuck playing the play-in tournament. So, man, but I don't know. At this point, it's all like hypothetical. When Ben Simmons comes back, when KD comes back, then how do they mesh? There's a lot of things for them to figure out, to be honest. I would say that the thing that they have going for them, and the Lakers don't, is that this team is all comprised of shot makers. They have a lot of shooting on this team, and I feel like the shot making would beat any type of defensive weakness that they have, or playing style weakness, or basically what the Lakers are struggling with right now. The Westbrook situation, the Melo situation. But at the end of the day, when you have the shot making of KD, of Kyrie, of Seth Curry, who people don't know is not a great shooter, he's elite shooter, and has been for the last, 4 seasons, basically consistently above 40%. So we might as well have 1-8 matchup being Miami and Brooklyn, and that's gonna be a bloodbath. I don't even know what happens then.
Yeah, because to the point about shot making, that's the thing. You have two of the greatest ever in terms of that with Kyrie and KD. And so even on a night like last night where the Nets come in totally depleted playing the defending champions, Kyrie can pour in a certain amount or hit the most insane shots you've seen to keep them in a game or pull them back into a game or pull you ahead just enough to win. But when you have that, that is a complete wild card that feels that not 100% like it can overcome the mountain they're facing of getting guys back within probably a month of the playoffs and trying to go on a championship run. That seems like a very steep mountain to climb, but still though, it's super unfortunate if you're a Miami Heat team to possibly be having to face a Kyrie and a KD in the first round, which is, again, like it is hypothetical at this moment. They could still end up 7 seed and you avoid that. Now all of a sudden the Chicago Bulls get you. But I also do think because of the time that these guys have missed, somebody like Cam Thomas might end up playing some important minutes. He's been able to score in bunches since they've been so depleted. So these have been really good reps for him. And I am interested to see how much they would use someone like him in the playoffs. Even Kessler Edwards defensively, I think might end up playing a role for them. But like you said, with Seth, with Kyrie, with KD, that is going to give somebody hell in the first round because if they're healthy, they're not just going to roll over. And at that point, I am assuming you'll have some version of Ben Simmons defense, and with him trying to ramp up right now and he can't even get back on the court, I'm not sure how great it'll be since he's almost reaching a year since he's played. It's getting close to that. I'm not sure what version of that you get, but that is just like that's just life in the East. There's just nowhere to hide. Any team that you play is going to be a competitive series. It's just how competitive is it going to be at this point? If these are the 8 teams that finish, I see the Hawks are trying to sneak in as well, and they would have to take one of these spots from somebody. Gosh, the Atlanta Hawks would have to take a spot. I just realized that because they're one of those late bloomers. They've been trying to get healthy all year, and now they are. They still may end up making it and taking Toronto out or something like that. Man, that's just gonna be incredible. But you said you like Miami. I do too. I've been pretty high on them the whole year, despite not having most of their team together, as you mentioned with that stat. They've been able to hang on to this first seed, which is ridiculous. They're 40-21. Coming right behind them are the Chicago Bulls, and I noticed you hadn't asked about them, and they were not your favorite. So what are you looking at in terms of this squad? Because they are also, well, they're a game behind the Miami Heat. And DeMar DeRozan is he's a fringe MVP candidate. It's not going to penetrate the top 3 anytime soon, but he's there. You got shot making on that team, as you were just saying. Ayo Dosunmu has come in, gave them great minutes. He's helped them defensively, and Vucevic it seems like he's starting to make shots at a steadier diet. And they're still not healthy. They still don't have Lonzo Ball and Caruso. So I feel good about the Chicago Bulls. I just, again, with this conference, who knows, right?
Talk about a refreshing team. Me and my friend, we were like really stoked to see them from the start of the season. It wasn't really like a slow ramp up and stuff like that. They sneak in. No, right from the jump, they took that top spot, top 2, top 3. They were always at the top. And it's so funny they do it with my favorite shot, the mid range. They do it. What's that phrase? Against the grain? Do you say that? Yeah. By the way, for people that don't know, English is not my first language, so you often hear me stuttering and trying to compose myself. But yeah, I love the team. Although I don't think they'll be able to pose a big threat to one of the main big dogs. But I just really love how they've been able to kind of insert themselves as a new team in the mix. And talk about not being healthy. They're still without Lonzo, still without Caruso, and they've been hit with COVID, with injuries. Also, Zach LaVine missed a huge portion of the season as well. So they've been able to withstand all of that and just stay at the top. I don't even know how at this point. And again, whenever you don't know how, check defensive statistics. And they play discipline, they play good defense, and that's one of the reasons as well.
So do you not give them contender status though? So at this point, the seeding is pretty much arbitrary because they could be second seed today and they could a week from now be fifth. So obviously, just being first or second doesn't necessarily mean you are a contender. But you sound like you see them more as I don't know, probably like a second round team. Am I reading that right?
I make it seem that way, although I root for them to kind of upset a team. But I don't know if you saw last night, Memphis Chicago.
I watched it.
They put Desmond Bain on DeRozan, and he really got up into him. He defended it great, and DeRozan started off 1 for 7, 1 for 9. I don't really know the numbers, but some of those shots were looking ugly. And I was like, in the playoffs, when you're at the top of the scouting report and the whole team game plans around you, I don't know if they got enough adjustments, enough different looks to throw at him, because basically this team, when it's when the most important thing comes, it's him or Levine making shots. And I don't know if they got enough to beat a team 4 times out of 7. I mean, when we talk about Miami, when we talk about Brooklyn, when we talk about, because when you put them side to side, a lot of those teams are going to have more shot making, more bucket getters, more,
Yeah, when you talk about putting them side to side, that's something I had kind of been thinking about. It's just certain specific matchups. One that I'm looking at would be the second round of the playoffs. At the moment, the way the standings are, it'd be the Bulls in Philadelphia. And I immediately get interested in a matchup that has Embiid and Vucevic for a series. I think Vucevic had been solid. He's been doing some things solid on defense this year, but especially when you now throw in the guy who can get Embiid really solid looks via pick and roll. Oh, sorry, did I say Levine or Embiid? Yeah, the guy that can get Embiid solid. Embiid. Yeah, that can get him solid looks via pick and roll. That is going to be really interesting in a matchup, and how much they go to that. With Chicago, that's a question that I've been subtly throwing out there. I hadn't been throwing it out there to just where, is DeRozan gonna choke in the playoffs? That's how a lot of people phrase it. That's not really the question I've been asking. I've just been going, hey, the shots, and I even made a video 2 days ago. That's my latest video is DeRozan and some of what he did to the Hawks, and it's beautiful. The mid-range is beautiful. His bag is crazy deep. I've just been so curious about it for the playoffs because it does seem like even when he creates space, it is, I don't know, it's difficult, man. There's a reason that his game is sticking out more than pretty much anybody else in mid-range this year. He does some really, really difficult things, and I wonder how far through the playoffs can you get off of that. There is one train of thought where, okay, if you send help to him or you send double teams or you have guys in help positions, he should have some shooters that knock shots down as well. But I am curious about, like you just said, with the Desmond Bain matchup last night. I know DeRozan eventually did get it going. He finished decently. When I first looked, I think he was like, it was something like 1 for 12 or something that's super uncharacteristic.
He still finished in the 30s, but yeah, he picked it up in the second half. Yeah. But talking about the double teams and stuff like that, that's what Memphis did. Bain was his primary defender, but on the turn, you know how he likes to back down and then turn on one side, shoot fade away. On the turn, they would send a second defender at him, trying to make him make decisions. And at the beginning, he was kind of struggling, making an adjustment, finding the open guy. And when he found the guy, Memphis were quick enough to rotate and make somebody else beat them. So that was a good game plan for them. And I immediately thought, is this how it's going to be in the playoffs? Because let me give you a nice comparison. Is this going to be a similar situation like it was with Julius Randle? He made a bunch of shots last year in the season, most improved, stuff like that, and he was the talk of the, throughout the league. But then in that Atlanta series, when the defense was focused on him, he struggled both making shots and finding other guys. And so I was like, damn, was this like a fluke? And obviously with DeRozan, I'm not in that camp. Used to be. I gotta admit, I used to be, looking at this. Oh, he choked. He blah blah blah. But I'm not in that camp. But it just at some point, if they put double team on you, you gotta make decisions. You gotta find open guys. You gotta provide for the team.
Yeah, for sure. To the point with the Knicks and Julius Randle. First of all, I hope for DeRozan's sake it doesn't turn into that, because he'll never hear the end of it. But I'm counting on it not turning into that. Even if it doesn't look like it does in the regular season, I don't think it would get that extreme, just because the Bulls are a lot more of an offensively talented team than that Knicks team was last year. So Julius Randle struggled finding guys, but I just, having a Levine around you, having the Vucevic that actually makes 3-point shots around you, that's where, you kind of wonder, will you get that consistently in the playoffs? But yeah, just having better pieces should, make it so it doesn't fall apart to that level. But you raise a really good point with the double teams. So in the Hawks breakdown I was looking at, first of all, the Hawks aren't so great at defense this year. They've been getting better as the season has improved, but one thing that you would see is they were kind of just showing, they were just like lightly showing, almost like they wanted a double team, but they wouldn't really. And this is coming from an average or a below average defensive team. It's in the regular season. In the playoffs, like you said, when the guy's at the top of the scouting report, so specifically for DeRozan, you know that if all season he's been doing this for mid-range, you are right. They're not just gonna sit by and lose because DeRozan just one-on-one'd your defender, or just kept getting to the same spot. At a certain point, it'll be pick your poison, and it'll be a part where the best defensive teams will want to turn him into a playmaker. So, okay, yeah, Levine is a good shooter, he's a good shot maker. Yeah, he's gonna do what he's gonna do as well, but we're more comfortable with Levine getting a shot. We're more comfortable with Lonzo Ball getting a shot, or Ayo Dosunmu, or whoever. You're more comfortable with any of that than you are DeMar DeRozan looking at a guy that's lightly helping and then like dribbling towards him and stepping back and getting an open shot. I don't think the best defensive teams are gonna let themselves lose that way. So yeah, it'll be a lot like you said with Memphis. It'll be a solid decision. All right, we're coming at you. If you want to shoot over a double team, you can, but we're not gonna lose because we gave you the same looks that you had the entire regular season. And that's where it's gonna fall on the rest of the Bulls, because it's gonna even more so than it does for a good team now that might deploy that type of defensive strategy, especially in the playoffs. Yeah, it's gonna fall heavily on the ball coming to you, basically, because the Atlanta Hawks tried to, they didn't really triple team him at the end, but they sent 2 double teams to him at the last play, or one of the last plays, and then he found Ayo Dosunmu. But yeah, it will be a ton of playmaking, because boy, if you're a top coach and you watch what DeRozan has done this year, you're like, bro, I'll lose to the Chicago Bulls. I'll be happy to lose to the Bulls, but it's not going to be because DeRozan hit the same shot for 4 games to a series every single time. So that's where I'm at with the Bulls. I still, like, if they made it there, they have the talent to. They're as talented as anybody in the East. They have the talent to get there, but I have to see it. I do have to absolutely see it play out. And some of these teams, again, mostly as defensive matchups, that's where I'm going to be really interested. It gets really interesting in a Philly and Bulls series when you have like Caruso and Lonzo to throw at James Harden, and then other guys on the bench are going to have to step up there. It gets really. Did you have something you wanted to say? I think I heard you about to say something.
No, I was just following what you were saying.
Right.
But at the same time, did you mention what's your team from the East?
Yeah, I'm a fan. No, not a fan. My team from the East. Yeah. Up to this point, honestly, I had been, and you brought up a good point, but I have been doing the safe pick of Milwaukee, despite them being where they are in the standings. I have been picking the safe just because I feel. And again, this is where the East just has so many questions. You can be safe and say Milwaukee, but also one thing that I believe is underrated anyways is them not having Brook Lopez. I feel like everyone has just kind of forgotten about him and his role on what they did defensively as a base last year. Because he's been out, because Bobby Portis is filled in with offense and even rebounding. It's like the existence of Lopez has been forgotten. So when you pick Milwaukee, it's safe because they're the champions and because there's the Eastern Conference champions, but it's also maybe not as safe for the reason of just trying to be healthy. And like you said, losing questionable games. I mean, 36-25 is not that impressive of a record. And caveat, they have been missing guys like at the beginning of the season. I think that's where a lot of those losses came from. They didn't often have the big three together, but still trying to see. We've got streaky Chris Middleton this season. Streaky Chris Middleton is a thing you see in the playoffs sometimes. That's the one that we've gotten this season so far. But to be honest, I feel like picking someone coming out of the East this year is really just every year. I guess it's somewhat of a guess, but especially this year, you could go Milwaukee, but I'm equally not as mad at you if you say Miami. If we get more samples of Harden and Embiid, I'm not mad at that point if you say it's the Sixers. There's more than one good pick this year. But yeah, it's
for sure. Things could change like 10 games from now if Philly go on like a crazy streak and we see what they're capable of doing, what this duo can do together. I can see a lot of people shifting to that side, just picking them to go all the way. But yeah.
I will say the one thing that you absolutely don't want to happen if you're the Bucks, because a lot of the times a team comes in their year off of a championship and their record isn't as good as it was the year before. It pretty much what you see what's happening with the Bucks right now. What I will say is they don't want to. At this point, it's a dangerous game of them following into the 6th seed. You get 6-seeded Bucks. Guess what you might get? You might get Philly in the first round. And Embiid plays Philly well. I mean, Embiid plays Milwaukee well. They still, in my opinion, don't have a guy nobody has a guy that can guard Embiid, but they don't really have great options. You just signed Ibaka to try to help with something like that. They've ran through big men trying to figure out how to maybe not replace Brook Lopez, but just somebody to stand in his spot this year. And you're going to get into a series and you're not going to have him there. And Embiid is probably going to eat in that series. So you don't want Philly in the first round.
The status of Brook Lopez?
We don't. Like, really quickly, the last thing we heard was that, first of all, he had back surgery. So to me, that meant he's not coming back this season. I have not heard an update on him in forever. And when you type him in on Google, all you see is like, hey, when are we getting Brook Lopez back? There's not really updates. There's not really solid updates. So yeah, if you're Milwaukee, you don't want to fall to 6 if you're Milwaukee and end up playing one of Chicago, Philly, or Miami. I think, and this will be the last team we talk about in the East because we don't need to go through every team in the East. But when I said earlier, it's hard to call a team a weak link in the Eastern Conference. Among those upper teams, as good as Cleveland has been, and I'm curious about your thought about the Cavaliers this year, as good as they've been, if you're a contending team and you fall to a certain spot, you really kind of, in my opinion, want that 5th spot, so you play them in the first round. Out of everybody you could get, like take for instance Milwaukee being in that 5th spot where they are right now. Out of Sixers, Bulls, Heat, you want to play Cleveland. I think pretty much any team that has to be in that type of predicament is thinking that. Although when healthy, they've been good, and it's still not a whole lot better because they've been a very solid team to me.
Here's the thing about them. To me, they're a great system team. The way the Phoenix Suns are, the way the Denver Nuggets are, they play through a system. But at this point, even though the system can get you far, you still, at the end of the day, have to have players who, when it matters, they can make a play. Okay, Garland has been like developing himself into a great player. Evan Mobley as well. We see the rise of my guy, Jared Allen. But that is not a caliber of player that these other teams have. That trio is not a trio that other teams have. So although the system can get them far and has gotten them to, like, are they 4th now? Where they at?
Yeah, they're 4th. Yeah, they're still 4.
Yeah, and so they have a great season. But each and every one of these teams, I feel like, wants to get into a matchup with Cleveland, and that's nothing against them. They can prove that this is a great system, that they can attract free agents. This is a great place to play. That's how Brooklyn started. If you remember a few years ago in that Philadelphia matchup, when they have Karis LeVert, they have D'Angelo Russell, Jared Allen, they were all young players up and coming who outcasts in other teams, and they found their their team here played well, and all of a sudden Kenny Atkinson was the coach. So all of a sudden they proved that this is a great environment, great team, great system. So now all of a sudden a bunch of players want to go there, and you got a big three, which has been broken up since then, but still, you want players to see that this is a good team to play for, and to go there, and then they're making a great first step. But it's gonna take some time, and in these playoffs, I feel like it's a huge step for them to even get there. So regardless of what happens, it's gonna be a success for them.
Yeah, for sure. This season for Cleveland is successful already by any measure. Even at this point, they've been missing Darius Garland for a while. They're still where they are. They've had to fill in constantly. Karis LeVert is now out. They've had to give Rondo minutes and let him just kind of do what he does as a veteran point guard. But they've had to fall back, not super far through the roster, but yeah, we just haven't really seen their full team for a lot of the season. I mean, Sexton hadn't been there since probably the very beginning. So if for any reason that you could say they're a good team and all these things, if for no other reason that they have dealt with so many injuries, that's why you'd want to play them in the first round. And the fact that they, like you said, it's just a young team right now. It's just a very young team. Evan Mobley has a ways to go, even though he's going to be great, and he's good right now, rookie of the year in my opinion, on both sides of the ball. But if it comes down to in your options, we talked about the options before, and you just need to survive. Yeah, give me Cleveland in the first round. Even as a Celtics fan who wants to see them advance further, yeah, hell yeah, I would rather play Cleveland, just because that's going to be their first time there too, for a lot of them anyways. You're going to be playing one of the best players as a rookie. If I want to advance to the second round, yeah, give me them. That doesn't mean we'll beat them, but for my best chance, please give me the Cleveland Cavaliers. But yes, successful season for them, and they've got something to build on. And like you said, it's a place that people will eventually want to go, which you could never say that about Cleveland, unless it's LeBron James going back and forth there, who actually wants to sign there in the offseason. Now that's a thing that you could be looking at. So they pretty much round out what's interesting in the Eastern Conference. We will, because we spent a lot of time there, so in the interest of time, we'll just start looking over the West. And we already talked a little bit about the Memphis Grizzlies, so that was actually of the little things that I had written down for you. The Memphis Grizzlies were one, because I am just super curious about this squad. On one hand, and I made the video earlier in the season, they strike me as how the 2010 Thunder were, where they were super young, super talented, could probably beat a lot of teams in the other conference, but in their conference, it's okay. There's a couple of squads where it's just gonna be that mountain's gonna be too high to scale. For the Thunder, it was the Lakers at that point, 2010 Lakers, even though they took them 6 games and could have really gone to a 7th. However, Memphis, man, the way they've been playing, and the fact that Ja is where he's at, they almost seem like a step above where the 2010 Thunder were, because I'm not saying that they can beat one of these top 2 teams in the second round, because that's who they'd end up playing, but I'd be damned if I was super surprised if they did. If you gave them, who knows what's up with Draymond Green right now. We'll have to see what shape he comes back in. But if you get Golden State in the second round, who is really good, I at least wonder. I picked Golden State in that series, but boy, Memphis has been great. Ja has been great, and I am just really, I don't know. I put on a lot of things. I put a question mark, because one hand it's like, oh, that's just the young, exciting team that'll be here next year. On the other, it's like, damn, are they here right now?
And that's a great comparison with the OKC Thunder, but I feel like not the competition, but back then the Lakers were like a clear-cut favorite.
Oh yeah, they were.
Now this year, as we talked about the East, similar situation in the West as well. I don't know, an injury here and there. Draymond Green has been out for a while. Now CP3 with a thumb injury, and he's always injury prone, although I would love for him to get a championship, but he always kind of gets a way to get injured, finds a way to get injured. So I don't know. I told my friend last year after the playoffs, I was like, hey, Memphis, I love Memphis, and not because Ja Morant, but because the other guys like Desmond Bain, like Dylan Brooks, like all those other guys. And I was like, if Ja Morant takes the next step, which is like a natural next step, not a huge leap, not a something extraordinary. I did not even expect this. 27 per game, like that's crazy. Going in the paint, leading the league in paint points. That means that dude is unstoppable. I did not even expect for him to be unstoppable. I was just going off of all the other guys. I felt like the team is kind of complete, but they also deal with injuries as well. Like Dylan Brooks has not been playing this season at all. Almost he played like 20 games. So I don't know when he comes back, but he's a huge part of the team offense, but also defense as well. He always guards the best player on the opposing team. So I want to see him on the court. He's actually one of my favorite players. I like those type of gritty, grinded out guys. Even though it maybe may have sounded like too critical towards Smart. He's also one of my favorite players. I like that type of guys,
Right. Yeah, no, it is the other guys, like you said, and specifically also Jaren Jackson, who I still think has another jump to go, which is why I'm kind of holding out and being too excited about them, because you come into next year, you have Jaws jump this year, which, like you said, it was 19 points a game last year, up to 27, just very elite scorer now. That's an insane step forward. In another year where Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid didn't exist, like you would have him pretty high on the MVP ladder with that type of jump. But then Jaren will probably take I don't know if the jump will be that big next year, but he still has a ways to go too. And then all of a sudden Memphis could be leading the conference. What intrigues me so much with them is just the fact that at this point they will almost surely play Golden State in the second round, and that's the team that. And Golden State is a better team. They more championship experience. Obviously, you've got the better shooters. And especially if you have Steph going the way Steph is going, that is a better team. It's just Memphis has never, ever once cared about that when they've played them, and they've played them very well each time. Even coming into this season, they've played them very well. And so when that playoff series does come up, I'm like, okay, I could see Golden State taking them 6 games to get rid of that team. Once you get into playoff basketball and such, I could see that taking 6 games, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it became a real scare and ended up going something like 7, unless Golden State just completely turns it on and becomes like Golden State like they were when they were healthy. Then okay, this conversation is irrelevant if that ends up happening. But they do match them well, they do play them well. But I would say that's where it would end for me. So for Memphis, if you stretched it and said they upset the Warriors for whatever reason, whether Draymond wasn't as